You go there. You go there. I think I'm on the. This. Michael, sorry. You here and Igor here. Yes, super. Thank you, gentlemen. Hoppa. Okay, Ken. Okay. Very warm welcome to everyone here in the room, as well as those that watch us online. We are very honored and pleasured that we can bring this topic of a blockchain into this audience here among the industry people and industry leaders. Now, we have a lot of content to share today. We have a lot of good stories about blockchain to talk about. I just want to have one more word. There is going to be one more blockchain session on Friday, which more focusing on blockchain and IoT. Today we talk about primarily blockchain in global trade, meaning in a trade transactions and trade facilitation. Again, I'm very pleased to be here as a moderator with you. For sure, many of you have seen a picture like this. Basically, how does the Bitcoin works? What's this blockchain technology? What's the data arrangement? And it's definitely a very exciting topic, and it's definitely very important to understand it. Definitely, you have seen topics like wallet, like hashing, like Ethereum, whatnot, right? But we have to a little bit disappoint you. We are not talking this today. We are talking primarily about use cases in logistics and supply chain, and we are talking about its value. We have here very prominent good speakers who will basically talk about their experience, their journey, and we want to basically bring that over to you. Now, let me start with a little bit of why we are here in 2021. Why we are here. We can have sort of a blockchain curriculum, like you guys have a curriculum when you send application for a job. Also, a blockchain has its own history in a way. It started all in 2008 with the blockchain, with the Bitcoin launch, with the so-called white paper, and it took some 2 years to run a first transaction on that thing. Back then, it was a sole experimental project. Some technical geeks, most likely in California, are playing with some data and doing some sort of transactions. It took some 3 years where Bitcoin reached a certain value of, say, $1,000 equivalent in a normal currency. That's when the business world, also logistics world, start to watch. There is something out there which may be interesting and which may even work. Next milestone was, perhaps two key milestones, was the launch of what is called an Ethereum network, which is basically yet another type of a blockchain introduced. And that one brings us to what we call a smart contract. Smart contract, new term, is basically a digital contract, the same thing that you have on a paper, but it's in a digital form which enforces each party, either two parties or multiple parties, to fulfill their contractual obligations. Similar type of technology or wave was introduction of a hyperledger. This is done by the IBM, also about the same year, 2015. And hyperledger is really talking about a private section of the blockchain. We will get to the public versus private in a minute as well. The most prominent thing, what even caught my attention back then, was an application called Everledger. That's the tracing of a history or of origin of a diamond. My wife is going to have a birthday very soon. Of course, I'm going to buy some diamond or some precious stone. I want to know that this precious stone is not from some dodgy country or suspicious background. One more milestone was the boom in 2017 when the Bitcoin came really very high to almost 20,000 USD. And around those years, you definitely noticed there was this ICO mania. So everyone is starting up something, issuing a coin and asking you for money. Most of these companies are gone, or most of these initiatives are gone, but some remain and some operates today. In the industry of logistics, we have a very significant launch of TraceLabs back in 2018, which is one of the key blockchain based on the Hyperledger technology. And then we have a 2021, and you have all seen it, we have now a Bitcoin at the level of 60,000 USD, or now is about 40,000. The main message is here that, as per Gartner, there is some 2 trillion USD in the whole ecosystems of blockchains and cryptocurrency being allocated today and traded. And there is a reason why this industry exists. Now, we are not going to talk too much about crypto, because that's a financial word. We are more focusing onto the world of logistics and supply chain. For supply chain, the key question, are we talking about a technology, new piece of technology? This is one of the questions I want to ask my panelists in a minute. Or is it also something new, something like a new trading concept, or perhaps a business model? I have read some years ago, I have read a book of Don Tapscott, The Blockchain Revolution, and he kind of explained very well. He talks about internet the way we know it as an internet of information, where we can share, we can copy data. Then he says that blockchain enables a new type of internet, an internet of value, where things of value like money, identity, or piece of information is uniquely locked in some piece of technology where I know who is the unique owner or a custody person of that record. Now, he called a blockchain a trust protocol. We have a lot of already moving and running blockchain implementations in the logistics. One of few is, again, the Everledger being mentioned, the TraceLabs, but also one of the very interesting, Singapore is running a blockchain application to issue the certificate of origin for exporters out of Singapore. This is a super important document in a trade realm, and it is the Chamber of Commerce which assure through the technology that that particular document is original and what is stated in the document is basically true. Again, Gartner also spent some time on this technology, and they definitely recommended each entity to basically look at it and evaluate its impact. And they even talk about maturity of blockchains. They talk about blockchain-enabled solution, which we more hopefully are behind that wave. They talk about blockchain-inspired and blockchain-complete, which I am guessing we are at that stage. And then sometime after 2030, expectation again, it should be full blockchain solutions. Now, one of my last information which I want to share before we ask the questions to our speakers is the notion of a private versus public blockchain. Perhaps it may be sounding too technical, but it's also important for you, as if you're looking at that topic, to understand what these two terms means. Typically, private means that that whole infrastructure of the technology runs on a private infrastructure, either in your data center or your partner-controlled data center. We also try to a little bit sort the major blockchains according to that chain. And the other side, you see the public. Public means anyone can enter that ecosystem and provide a computing power. So it gives also certain independence. But that anyone needs to be rewarded by some sort of either coin or a token to basically pay off their cost. Now, last thing, let me introduce the speakers right now. So we have very excellent speakers from all over the spectrum of blockchains. We have Mr. Igor Jakomin, who is a Chief Strategy Officer for company CargoX, based out of Slovenia. And Igor is going to share with us some progresses which CargoX made on the electronic bill of lading, as well as on the ACI filing. We have a speaker, Arne Mielken, from Customs Manager based in UK. Arne is an expert and a consultant in terms of global compliance and global trade facilitation. And he has a good touch points into WCO and WTO and seeing what do they do in the terms or in the field of a blockchain. Third speaker is Mr. Michael Schramm. I hope I can say Michael, or Michael Schramm, head of the Blockchain Competency Center at Ernst & Young. Michael is based in Vienna. The competence center that he runs is servicing customers in consulting implementation of a practical blockchain. I think what Michael comes with is a really project-based best practices learning, how to do that transformation, what are the obstacles, what are the common things on the way. And the last but not least is Mr. Jurij Škornik from TraceLabs organization or company, which is basically the core developers group of a blockchain named as Origin Trail. And Jurij has a very good story for us about audit trails and the traceability of a factory who produce something and their the certificates of their compliance in terms of security or child labor or whatnot, as well as there is some new movement in TraceLabs in customs compliance. So again, Jurij will share more on that sense. Before I hand over to Igor, I would like to ask my panelists to basically address at minimum 2 questions, and that will be the 2 first. Within your talk, can you say what do you think? Is a blockchain a technology? Well, for sure it's a technology. Or is it also going to be some sort of a new concept or new business model as such? One question. Second question, who is actually your customer? Who is the user of a blockchain? Do we have a particular name or particular person or persona per se? Or is it some sort of a group of companies or perhaps even a formal entity? For sure, I'm sure that you will address the thing about the value and the use cases. So here we go. I hand over to Igor. Igor, your space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. And thank you, Jakub, for inviting us to speak at this conference. I would like to present today the use case of the company CargoX, which the project started in 2017. 2018, we set up the company CargoX, where we put together different stakeholders and different enthusiasts from the field of shipping industry and from the field of IT and blockchain. Our mission at that time when we started was to digitalize the bill of lading. I suppose that all of you know bill of lading is a document of title. It's a document where with transferring the hard copy document you are transferring the value and you are transferring the ownership of the goods. I don't know if you can imagine that this document already exists in the same way from the 14th century on, and it was never, till now, it was not digitalized. Even though already years and years ago, documents like treasury bonds, shares, and all others were digitalized, bill of lading, it's still in a hard copy. At that time, we decided that blockchain technology is the right technology to digitalize this document and to offer the transfer of value in a digital way. Today, our platform is really grew up. We develop a lot. Today is in use the 3rd generation of our platform, and you can transfer more than 60 different documents in shipping and trading business. About the technology, we decided from early beginning to use blockchain as a technology, and we decided to use a public blockchain. We started on the Ethereum network. In the years of development, we switched for a certain period of time to Matic network, which is called Polygon right now, which is a side chain of Ethereum due to the scalability and due to the transaction cost. But that's not mean that we will switch back to Ethereum when Ethereum will make some development changes in the near future. Reasons why we are on the public blockchain, there are a lot of reasons. First of all is neutrality. You have to know that public blockchain is not owned by any government, is not backed by any agency. is not controlled by anyone. It's controlled by the owners of the nodes. Owners are independent persons, independent companies all over the world. Today, you don't know who is the owner of one single node in the Ethereum network. And you have to know that Ethereum network consists of more than 10,000 different nodes around the world. Second, why we decided it's security, it's fast transaction, and all other things which are needed for a digital transaction of such kind of document, which is so important by mode of transport, and the most important thing, by transferring the value. You can imagine that you owning a bill of lading for a tanker of crude oil, it can worth millions and millions, and you cannot send it by email or other ways of today digital exchange of documents. That was the beginning 2018 and on. Due to the slow evolvement of adoption of such a document and adoption from the carrier side, we decided to move to another group of stakeholders, and these are the governments. So we started to speak to different governments all around the world and trying to persuade them to adopt blockchain technology as a technology for a certain part of their operations. We started and we succeed as a first case, we succeed with the government of the Republic of Egypt, where from the 1st of October on, so a few days ago, it's mandatory to upload all the documents. If you are an exporter to Egypt and you want to import your goods, you have to upload all the required documents via our platform and present them in advance. 36 hours before the departure of the ship, you have to present them to the custom control. You can imagine how it was in the past. In the past was really hard copy transaction. You had to collect all the paper documents, send it to the embassy, wait 7 days to approval, collect back from the embassy, call the courier service, send it to Egypt, and all this procedure must be done before the arrival of the ship. Today, you can do it digitally, uploading all the documents, send, and that what is your duty or what you have to do. With this procedure, we prove that the throughput through the custom procedure and through the port is much faster, much more secure, and the Egyptian custom authorities have a complete control over the entire imported cargo to Egypt. If the question is if we will stop here, we just started with the digital way of doing and supporting digital trade. What we will do in the next stage, we will change the uploading documents to transact and documents to transaction of data. So structured way of document will be in our platform, and that will be the next stage what we will offer to Egyptian government and of course also to the other governments. That's in short. Hope that I've been time.
Super.
Thank you very much.
Now space for Arne. Arne, just go ahead.
Thank you. Well, that was great. So the world is your oyster. You start with Egypt and then off to the world it is. Well, this is great, right? This is a first use case of how blockchain can enable faster document upload. As Jakub has said, I work with a lot of clients. These are mainly also your customers if you're in the logistics. I work with hundreds of importers, exporters across Europe and across the world. And they listen to the whole debate on blockchain, and then they say to me, so what's in it for me? Why are you telling me what it is that the thing does? What are the practical benefits it does, and how does it do 4 things? And that's what my conversation is about. It's a little critical. I'm all in for blockchain. I've been working with blockchain, and Jakub knows this, for many, many years. And I'm a strong believer that this is the technology of the future. But we have to pick up our customers where they are. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And they ask for things. Number 1, how does it help me reach my customers faster? Number 2, how does it reduce bureaucracy, less paperwork, less red tape? Number 3, how does it help me stay compliant? How does it help me be compliant? And number 4, how does all of this together help me grow my business globally faster? It's like, and excuse me very much, it's like Google. You don't really want to know what it does, but every time I type something in, I hopefully get a good answer. And that is where importers and exporters, and I'm happy to debate this with all of you, in fact, see blockchain right now. It's got to help me be better and save money before I am interested. Now, I've got a few slides here, but, you know, for the sake of argument, I'm going to run through them very quickly. Do you know, if you look at this question, what would you answer to this? What would you say? What country, what region is this? Thoughts? China. China. It's actually the EU. And why do I show you this? There are 900 million articles, and that is before Brexit, that we import and export from outside into the EU. And this matters why? It matters because we have a stake here in Slovakia, as well as in a whole of Europe. Blockchain, if it works and if it does what is promised, is a solution to bring in more, to bring in cheaper, and to save costs, time, and effort. And if there is duty at stake of 27 billion euros in 2019 alone, I'm interested if you can help me save that. You will all agree that the first 3 elements we put here on the screen have a positive. And you hear it here today. But the last one, customs clearance and control, it's not so positive. And why is that? Because of this. I believe the biggest friction in the system, and my company is set up in the UK because of Brexit, so you know what I'm talking about when I mention the border. This is what causes trouble. Yes, of course, there are freight rates and whatnot, but at the moment, the biggest hindrance of fast global trade is customs. And yes, it has a noble cause. It protects us. It's a money-making machine for the government, but it's also feverishly complex. And it can derail a successful business. So what's on offer as a solution? This is really, really complex stuff, and it can stop the growth. So this is what we need to deal with. In order for businesses, import and exports to care, we need solutions to these 4 things. And it comes down to this. As I've said, reach global customers faster, cut paperwork, bureaucracy, cut red tape, be compliant, stay compliant, and grow global business faster. And all of the use cases you hear today, and all of your own, these are the benchmarks by which I start to care. And what does this mean practically? The first steps are there. Just look. Egypt's on board. Well, that's the first step, because without smart borders, without the government support, we are nothing. The business community will not care. Am I right? So We need the governments to buy into it. You have the example of the smart borders of Egypt here. We need the government to allow it. Then we need to do our part and adopt it, embrace it, promise that we will take good care when using it. And then we need the whole world to get on board and offer trade facilitations. Here you see some of the examples that are currently discussed in the space that I represent, which is make the border go away, make you move goods faster, more efficiently, more effectively. The EU is looking at forecast studies. You know the example of the Singapore Chamber of Commerce, the e-certificate for origin. There is advancement on the ETIR convention, all enabling blockchain. So, and now we've heard it with Egypt. The steps are there, but we need more government support. We're not there yet, in my opinion. So to conclude, yes, we hear a lot of good things. Yes, we see what happens in Egypt. But we need the government to buy in. We need to answer 4 fundamental questions, as I've laid out. That creates the use case, that creates the business case, and that creates acceptance. Unless the government's on board, and the government is implementing it through its system, unless the government says, yes, businesses, I want you to adopt it, like Egypt has just shown, the technology is there, the use case must be explained, and if all of that comes together, then we are ready, Jakob, for 2025, when blockchain rolls up in an enhanced fashion. That's it. Thank you so much for your attention. I think I'm all out of talk. Are you ready?
Always.
All right. Take it away, Austria. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Arne. So my role is a bit more of a practical project implementation guy. I'm at EY, I'm leading a team that implements blockchain solutions, especially for supply chain and logistics. So I brought some ideas. I want to just briefly show 2 different projects that we are implementing and that we have implemented, and then give some lessons learned that we took out of these implementation of blockchain solutions for logistics. So this picture shows a bit the back office of a typical logistics companies that is storing their freight documents. And a bit similar to what Igor said, this is a huge potential of digitalizing those kind of freight documents. And I think, bill of lading, you're more in the shipping business, correct, on the sea. And we created a project together with DB Schenker and LKW Walter, where we said, let's focus on the street, because on the street there is a very new regulation. There was since 10 years from the UN, which is not ratified in all countries yet. There is since last year a new EU regulation, the FT protocol, which regulates how logistics companies are sharing and exchanging data with the public authorities. And just for the truck streets traffic, there are approximately 300 million of these CMRs every year in the EU, and this is growing enormously. And I did some research and I found different studies by universities and companies which said between 4 and 11 euros per CMR you can just save in your process because you digitalize it, because of you don't need to archive, you find it faster, you have less mistakes and you have easy access to it. So 300 million times 4 euros is quite a good business case, I would say, to offer something in that area. So what we did is a eCMR solution that we created with DB Schenker, with LKW Walter, with GS1, with several companies. We sit together 2 years ago and said, blockchain is so obviously suitable for logistics, but let's not do a technical prototype where the CIO gets famous, but let's do a really business thing where it really can help. And the CMR project came out because today you have this paper of which the truck driver has in his hand with the Nutella spot from breakfast and changing things with his pen. But this is a paper which is important for customs, for VAT, for police and so on. So there are a lot of reasons, and I talked both with shippers and with forwarders and with carriers, which had totally different needs and totally different benefits of such a digitalized version. Yeah, like process cost reduction is one of the main things. It's the electronic proof of delivery, especially for companies who are US-based and need to be SOX compliant. It's real-time access of data, not waiting 3 weeks until the truck driver has brought all, after 5 transportations, brought it back and scanned it in and sent it out. And so there are several benefits of that, and this is about documentations. But we also have done projects especially in Italy with Carrefour and Bofrost that I want to mention. This, you know, this from farm to fork, transparency around the whole supply chain. Now in Germany there is a new law which becomes effective in approximately 1 year, the Lieferkettengesetz, so about supply chain laws, where you have to prove things, and the European Union is preparing a EU-wide very similar law maybe 2 years later, where companies have to show where does it come from, have to put some transparency in their supply chain and providing information for some things. We did this in Italy for Carrefour with chicken meat and eggs and this poultry kind of foods, and Carrefour started it, and in the first quarters they created this project. They tripled their revenue on those products which were traceable, yeah? Or with Bofrost, with frozen fish, where people can scan the QR code, they can enter the lot number, really the batch number of the batch, and see where does it come from. And there are always 2 aspects in such projects. One aspect is the consumer part. You see there, you need to have some nice, very easy reading for consumers-based user interfaces to explain the fact. And the second part of the project is the back-end project, where you really have the logistics chain. There are several partners you have to onboard. You have to do interfaces and everything, and that's a big point. That is not to forget, which you can see in front, but which has a lot of potential, not only to put transparencies, but also to increase efficiency in the supply chain and have it as base for many other projects. Yeah? So when I'm asked for lessons learned in our projects that we have really implemented in real life and are in production today, I brought with me 5 ideas, 5 plus 1. So the first is coins are cool, but the taxman isn't. So when you do tokenization, either you have utility tokens, you use tokens for payment with your system, whatever. Many people think that it's a gray zone which is not so much regulated yet. That's totally wrong. Especially in the EU countries, it's very much regulated. So be careful what kind of tokens you have, and check what you are doing there from a law legal perspective. Blockchain always stands for transparency. Everybody can see everything. Yeah? On the other hand, we have GDPR in the EU. Yeah? So I cannot put everything on the public blockchain because this might be personal data that should be protected with GDPR. There is the right to change, the right to delete data and things like that. So that's not a contradiction necessarily, but you have to architect your blockchain very wisely, what to put there, in which way to put data, personal data on the blockchain. The third is low-hanging fruits versus business models. Blockchain is known as the big hype thing that creates new business models. Just because you use blockchain as a technology, it's not yet a business model. But that there are the potential to new business models. I think those projects are quite unmature today and in pilot phase, but there are a lot of low-hanging fruits using blockchain as a technology for automatizing processes. Blockchain is trust. You can read in every article, blockchain means trust. And my opinion is nobody trusts blockchain. Just because there's written blockchain on it, it does not make sense trust. So if you have a blockchain, if you're using blockchain, you still need to have regulatories and rules around that so that your customers, not maybe the end customers, but the people who are profiting from the blockchain understand why this means trust. And consumers don't speak blockchain. Yeah? I see so many attempts where companies try to explain consumers and customers why blockchain is so secure. I think that this will never work and should not work. So the fact, and therefore, coming to the food traceability samples, it needs a very simple language to customers and not try to explain them Merkle trees or hash codes or whatever. And finally, last lessons learned is, I'm back to my first picture of the back office of a logistics company, a typical logistics company in Europe. Remember, you are doing a digitalization project and not a blockchain project. In all my blockchain projects, blockchain is a technology, it's a part, it's an important part, it's super nice, it has a lot of advantages, but you are dealing not only with data that has to be secured, you are dealing with processes that human people are using at the end of the day. So it's a digitalization project, it's a change project, and this is very important to understand and not to see the technology only, but to see that the digitalization is much more than the technology, and especially in blockchain, which is especially in those cases interesting where you have transactions cross borders, cross organizations, and you need this trust feeling between many companies, partners, suppliers, and so on. Especially there, this idea of caring not only for data but also for processes and people is very important. That was my introduction.
One more thing before Jurij, before you go ahead. At Technical, did they get you a wine here to drink? How come we didn't get wine?
No, I brought this wine bottle with me, and if you want after the session, this is a blockchain certified wine. This is one of our first projects that we did in Italy, a nice Pinot Grigio from Sicily. And this is where we had our first pilot for a food traceability project. You can scan a QR code, you get some consumer-friendly information about the wine, when was the grapes took, and so on. It also showed us some limitations on systems like that, where the security, where the safety is not 100%. It made us learn how to use blockchain for food traceability. And you have, on the first step, you have a nice user interface which gives you information for the wine, but you also have some links that puts you to Etherscan. It's an open source tool for public Ethereum, where you can really see the transactions with hash codes. So for the nerds and the real specialists, they can see for this bottle of wine the notarization details where these documents about this origin of this wine has been stored and secured.
Super. Thank you. Okay, Jurij, sorry. Now you go ahead.
Yeah,
I think your part as well.
And, a lot of interesting issues identified and examples as to how the technology can be applied to use them. I'll try to build on those, and also to give a quick introduction as to how we, so TraceLabs actually utilize the technology to power the Origin Trail decentralized knowledge graph. Or try to speak a bit louder so that this is better. Yeah. Just a quick thing on what we do as a company, right? So our kind of purpose, in a sense, is organizing humanity's most important assets, making them discoverable, verifiable, and valuable. And how we do this is by utilizing the Origin Trail decentralized knowledge graph, which is the world's first decentralized knowledge graph. What this means, so what it actually is, just in a couple of sentences. The knowledge graph is essentially a global network of data and value exchange. That essentially drives network effects by enabling data across organizations to be linked and provide not only a piece of the puzzle, but rather a more comprehensive picture. And it's a combination of, so it's not an Origin Trail, it's not a blockchain, it's a combination of knowledge graph and blockchain technology. And the knowledge graph technology actually is already used by large data-driven organizations such as Google, Amazon, as in kind of within a single organization to drive insights, to derive knowledge and value. And what we did with Origin Trail essentially was we brought this, combined this technology with blockchain and brought it to a cross-organizational environment to bring value not only within an organization but across organizations. It's built on 3 core principles. So one is integrity. This is where the blockchain component comes in. And we utilize the graph itself. It's one graph, but it's utilizing many different blockchains, all public, based on the requirements of the use case, or just based on pure efficiency. Right now we're working with Ethereum, XDAI, Polygon, and we have Polkadot upcoming. The second core principle is interoperability. So the whole decentralized knowledge graph is based on global data standards. Specifically important for supply chains are the GS1 standards, traceability standards, but also W3C in a form of verifiable credentials, and all of the more technical standards as well. And the third component is really that privacy element that people, when you hear, public blockchain, you think, oh, my data is going to be public. That's not the case with the decentralized knowledge graph. Blockchains are really used to secure the data, but data isn't actually there. So we have very strict data access control that can be very defined based on requirements of each use case. And that's pretty much based on the decentralized knowledge graph, and we build applications on top that utilize that trusted and linked data. And what does this mean in practice? Well, I'll go through two of the use cases that we're working on, both of them together with our strategic partner, the British Standards Institution, or BSI. The first one being Scan Trusted Factory, which is really focusing on actually exchange of security audits for more than 20,000 factories, mostly in Asia, but all over the world. And just a sentence about SCAN. SCAN is the Supplier Compliance Audit Network. It's an organization of the largest US retailers and importers that have a combined revenue of over 1.4 trillion US dollars. It was formed, it's managed by BSI, and it was really formed to reduce the audit fatigue of security audits for SCAN member shared factories. So if a member has multiple members produce in the same factory, they don't know it, but the security audit has to be then performed 5 times, or had to be performed 5 times. Now it can be only done once. And how this works, how this translates into practice, we have all of these auditors that are actually assessing the compliance, the security compliance of a specific factory in Asia or anywhere in the world. And those security audits and data points are actually managed in the BSI's or our partner's system that is integrated with the Origin Trail decentralized knowledge graph. So all of these audits, they end up being secured on the decentralized knowledge graph and actually made available for verification and inspection, not only to the SCAN members who are the financiers of these things, but here we come to the customs point, right? Also the Customs and Border Protection, CBP, actually inspects those security audits, because those security audits are actually one of the import criteria for you to be able to import into the US. So if those security audits are not there, the import cannot go through. And this is where we're kind of really streamlining and making that data very easily accessible. But the customs and other governmental agencies can only see what they are actually allowed to see. So only those parameters that they are allowed to actually inspect. So this is kind of the Scan Trusted Factory use case. And going kind of a step further, which is the next one, the Trusted Bytes, is building on the concept of scan. And here we're also working with BSI. And the focus here is the facilitation of actually movement of goods across the UK border by providing the UK customs actually with enhanced risk APIs. Now, what does all that mean? In SCAN, we mentioned we focus on security audit data, and we have that available for verification to the CBP. Here, we're taking it a step further and looking at so the authorized economic operator compliance data, such as security policies, site maps, incident reports, to geographic risk data, so how likely is it that there is a threat of unmanifested cargo introduction, is there supply chain terrorism in a specific country or region, to then inspection data on facilities, equipment, suppliers, all of these audits, and then ultimately also shipment level data that is actually, what is in the shipment, where is it coming from, what was the geographic route that was that it went through, has the container seal been broken, does it have integrity, all of these things coming, all of these pieces of data coming from different systems are actually then secured on the Origin Trail decentralized knowledge graph, which then forms the basis for risk and incident assessment that BSI does, and provide it to HMRC, so UK Customs, to actually be able to facilitate, identify high-risk shipments easier, more precisely, inspect them and actually green light the shipments that, that they don't pose a significant risk, say supply chain security risk. And this is really then taking it a step further from scan and really going into the direction, Arne, that you mentioned of combining all of these different pieces of data and making them not only available but also verifiable, making sure that they can be understood, so adding a semantic layer to it, right? Because data, unstructured data is there, but it needs to be made usable, right? And this is where we play, essentially. This is how we utilize the blockchain component and really bringing the best of both worlds of public blockchains, but having that data permissioning and linked data approach that is kind of added by the knowledge graph technology. So yeah, those are kind of the two cases that I just wanted to go through. I think they fit nicely with what you mentioned before as well. I'm happy to discuss also in the panel further if there are any further questions. But that will be it from my side.
Thank you, Jurij. Thank you. So we are now getting to a discussion place or discussion questions. If anyone in the audience, you guys have a question, please just raise your hand. We try to plug in the question. Before you have this ready, I already have noted few down on the paper here, and again, there's a lot of topics, a lot of elements of this whole blockchain discussion that it will be hard to prioritize. But so let's just go for it. My first thing would be, and maybe a question maybe to Michael or even to you, Igor, why in your projects, why do you need a blockchain? Right? Why don't you install an Oracle database? You have some sort of application server, some nice UI. I mean, the UI is there always, right? In a web form or what, right? Why do you need, or why do you think that customer that you're servicing do prefer the solution to run on that blockchain? I have had some bits and pieces, but it would be good to reiterate. First, maybe I give word to Igor.
Yeah. The reason is really historical. When we started the CargoX project, we started, as I said, with the bill of lading. As bill of lading is the document of title and you're transferring value, the only real technology which was in our head that is suitable for transferring value is a blockchain. So that reason is that we started with this first project, and that was the reason that we are continuing on a blockchain, as in all these years we got a lot of certificates, a lot of approvals, and that's the reason that we are continuing on blockchain. Yeah, I agree with you that it's possible also to do it on other technologies, but from our point of view, is the history, as I said, for the transferring value. My understanding of blockchain is a technology for transferring value. So all the time when you have something which is highly valuable, the right technology is the blockchain. So that's the reason why we insist on that. Second is, as I said, we got a lot of approvals. When we started with the bill of lading, we started also to discuss with the international group of P&I clubs. For those who know what are the P&I clubs, these are the high-end insurance company who insure the shipping business. And we spent a year and a half to get the approval to switch from paper to a digital document. Nowadays, just 7 companies in the world have the approval for transact the bill of ladings in a digital way, so the approval of the P&I clubs. From the second side of the coin, if we can say, we also are right now in discussion and approved from big financial groups. This not mean banks, but groups who put together different banks in the different continents. So also from them, you need to be approved for a digital transaction, again, a bill of lading versus the letter of credit and so on. So that's the reason that we are insisting on blockchain.
Super. Michael, you go.
So I'm often asked this question, wouldn't that be possible without blockchain? Yeah. So the answer is yes, but the blockchain has some additional advantages that is not there with classical IT infrastructure. And the first big advantage that we already gain today when we talk about blockchain like notarization is that if you are in an ecosystem with transactions running around between several companies where there is not one strong company who demands the process, who checks everything, who also has the liability that everything works correctly, then you need some new kind of organizational or technological structure that helps you out without having a referee, somebody who says that's right, that's wrong. And blockchain allows transactions in an ecosystem where nobody is the big company or person or organization or body, the authority, the ministry, whatever, that says that's right or wrong. And this is a big advantage, and the more, and this is also a matter of time, digitalization in the last 20 years was about digitalizing the processes and data and the work within a company. The new thing about blockchain is we are now talking about digitalizing transaction across a whole ecosystem where there is not one big leader who says, this is how we do it, and this is my server, you put your data on my server, other way you out. It's about transactions of equally on the same level, companies on the same level that deal with each other and giving it a certain kind of trust without having this intermediary authority, organization, company, body, whatever. So this is the main advantage of blockchain today. But I think there will be a advantage of blockchain, why it is necessary in the future, which we are just scratching on the surface with our work, which is about really, as you said correctly, the also transactions, the transferring values.
Correct.
Today we use it as notarization to have a single source of truth and things like that. Nobody can change it, nobody can cheat. But if we really use it as cryptocurrencies are doing it, for really transferring goods, values, rights, whatever, this will be much more in the future. So we did a project with Microsoft Xbox where we are having all the digital rights. When you buy some content on your console, then there is a cascade of rights of artists and programmers and musicians and companies, distribution companies that earn some part of the money that I spent by buying this game or music or video. And we put all these in smart contracts, and in the first step now we have this notarization module. So when I buy it, within minutes everybody knows that this was there, and they earn now some cents or some euros or whatever. And the next step will be to also transfer the money in a digital way without having a bank, without having some kind of other things that happens in between. And therefore the process that was before 7 weeks for every purchase is now 3 minutes. And this is, I think, the next step where we are not so mature yet in the market because of many things, about of privacy issues on public blockchains and some things, but this will be the big next step for blockchains, I guess.
That kind of, thank you. That kind of brings me to the following question, because, and I'm of course being a little bit dumb person right now, eventually in your project for the CRM implementation, or Jurij for your BSI or scan project, who eventually, who invests into this? Who is the paying party to have that benefit? Because you said there is no central or what do you say, the referee, so to say, right? So if there's no referee, either a government, Arne, still your point, we're still waiting, or a leading entity, someone has to basically invest into, at minimum, the project, so setting things up, do some sort of a UI, do adoption, whatnot. Maybe, Jurij, could you, how does it work with what your experience? So who is the customer in terms of what is your business model eventually, right? You as a company, right? And then maybe back to you, Michael.
Yeah. Am I? Loud enough, okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, so for Origin Trail, the decentralized knowledge graph, essentially, it's an open source project, so anyone can use it if they want to, right? So it's not that, that it's a locked centralized system. That being said, we as TraceLabs, we do offer, of course, solutions and services to our customers that enable or streamline the way they can use this, right? And abstract certain complexities like dealing with crypto, dealing with these types of transactions, and make it easier for them to actually use this and build applications on top. So in Scan's use case, our customers are both BSI and Scan, whereas the user would be Scan and also the Customs and Border Protection, for example, in that scenario. So there's a lot of flexibility on how you set this up, right? You can go from, use it on your own, it's purely open source, you can build your own, completely your own decentralized applications on top, or TraceLabs helps, facilitates this utilization of the knowledge graph, brings value, of course, and abstracts complexity.
And in this particular case, for Scan project, I see logos like Home Depot or Target. Are they paying anything for this service per se? Is it like a public utility?
This is it's a great example of how you can integrate. It's a great example how you can integrate actually the decentralized knowledge graph with existing systems, because that's what we're also all about, not rip and replace the whole IT infrastructure. In this case, we're integrated with BSI Connect screen system, which is where the audits are managed. Just that the backbone of these audit reports for verification and inspection is data on the decentralized knowledge graph, right? And how then they manage the relationship with Scan and all of these types of things, right? So it's purely, it's very flexible as well, right? So very consultant answer is it depends on the use case, but in this case it's really BSI. Yeah.
Okay, super. Maybe Michael, can you answer the question? Who is paying? Who is your?
Well, who is paying if
for
I
the
say
implementation of the
yeah.
CRM, right?
Well, if you typically when you talk about public blockchains and transactions, the idea is of a transaction-based payment. Yeah. So I would say there are half real blockchain projects that use private blockchain systems, things like that, that are typically have again a very classical approach on software delivery as a SaaS model, and there is one company who is offering that. But in the future, I think when we really use public blockchains as they are intended to be, which is evolving slowly, but it is, then you're talking more about a transaction-based payment model. So if, I'm very sure that we will see in the future many blockchains which are for a specific sector or a specific niche or a specific use case. And there will be, similar to the open source community, companies who will provide functionality there, and there will be companies who earn money, because upon this framework of basic use cases,
On the Ethereum,
the normal users are paying transaction fees to consume the service. There will be then additional kind of companies who add additional value for paid service in a classical way. And this is the idea how public blockchains should work in the future.
Right.
We are struggling, many companies are struggling with that because it's a different kind of business model.
Right.
Like software companies who switch from a proprietary software system to an open source model, where you have to think totally different. But we see that it works, but you have to change your business model totally. And this is something which goes slowly, and companies have to adapt for that idea. But if you manage that, like in Linux, or if you in IT service, you have Linux and other open source things, and Ethereum, for example, and most of the blockchains are open source themselves. So the base is there. It needs just the companies to understand what their business model will be in such a decentralized way.
Right. You said the business model, so I think that comes to our question: is this a technology, or is it a new concept, new business model? Arne, you're kind of waiting here. Governments, you talk about it. Governments, and we already have some examples, right? The Egyptian government, we talk about the Singaporean Chamber of Commerce, well, perhaps not a government, but at least a public body. What will be the trigger or what should be the trigger that governments do realize the value for them in the blockchain implementations? And perhaps that may be a question next to you, Igor. What would be the ticking the ticking decision-making point of I, as a government, don't want to give to data which is hosted anywhere in the world, versus I want to be neutral, right? So that's maybe first, Arne, you go. When is the revolution coming?
Yes. Well, there's already a lot of work being done by a lot of companies, right? So constantly the governments are being invited to explore blockchains, and what we have seen is a lot of initial ideas that could work, but nothing has come to fruition that I've seen. This is the first major one that I've seen where this actually trickles down to the business.
Okay.
And we will see more of that in the future.
So you mean that's the first Egyptian government where they force the business
where
to...
there's a requirement
Right.
for business
Yes.
to actually do something that relates to the blockchain.
Yeah.
It's not fundamentally different whether I upload using an IT SaaS system. What you do with it in the background is neither here nor there,
Yes.
but it is something where the legislator says, now you must use this system. So the acceptance is there. It comes slowly. It starts with one and then it snowballs into it. The one that is the accelerator, in my opinion, will be when it works for the government and businesses, because then the pressure comes from both sides, not only from the tech companies that want to sell you the services, but for the real use at business level. And the classical example is this, and I hear a lot I pick up a lot of what was said before. If I have really good audited source data that maybe comes from an AEO or comes from a Bureau Veritas or the BSI that is correct, if that gets put into the blockchain and is now secure, it is correct, it is secure, I don't have the big referee company, and I can trust that data 3 steps down further in my supply chain when it reaches the UK or when it reaches Slovakia from Manila, for example, and I know this is correct, then that's very attractive. And if I can then use that data and make a customs declaration by scanning it, rather than having to type in information, so I'm going further than what you're saying. I don't want to upload any data. I don't want to give you any data. All I want is for you to scan the data that somebody gave me from somewhere down the line, because I know it is correct. Because at the moment, you force me to type in all this data, then I will be put on a blockchain. In the future, the real benefit, the real revolution, starts when businesses can start to show me with this scan, the Egyptians will be happy, and all the other parts in the supply chain will also be happy. Then the government saves time, the government saves money, the business saves time, the business saves money, then I want it, then everybody wants it.
And
make that happen, we win.
And the transparency. Okay, Igor?
Yeah. I would like just to add something, what Arne said. Government is one stakeholder who can really push this further and accept the blockchain as a technology. But Arne is right. When you have the push from 2 sides, from 3 sides, from the business as well, then it would be much easier. In our case, we also involved, for example, the Central Bank of Egypt, because the next step when we are speaking about these documents, especially when we are speaking about bill of lading, the banks are also one of the piece of the chain. When we are speaking about letter of credit, more than 70% of bill of ladings are connected with the letter of credit on the worldwide scale. So that's the reason that we also involve the financial sector. Last but not least is also new models, and also Michael mentioned this, paying methods. So trade finance and all the other stuff in the international trade, where we are speaking about exchange of money, accepting or delivering money, paying for the services, paying for the goods. This will be also another thing where blockchain will play a key role. It's at the early beginning, and I'm very sure that in few years of time that will be a reality. And just to answer to your initial question, why the governments accepting this and why the governments think about implementing blockchain, I already said previously, I will say once again, is neutrality. I think that you, Michael, said no ruling authority rule or control the blockchain, and that's the reason. In our case, I can say that we won this tender, if you would like to hear this word, just because of the neutrality, because all our competitors were somehow connected with some ruling authority which was not the case or which was not accepted for the government of Egypt.
Super.
May I
Super.
add a question maybe too, because you have more experiences with governmental authorizations using blockchain. So my experience is that we have a hard time discussing with public authorities about blockchain because they say block what? They do not understand, and they also do not see it as their competency to think about technological architectures, how to solve their problems. So I see in some countries, like in Germany, for example, that they are thinking about a Bundeschain, so a federal chain of the government only, and which is, to my opinion, not the real big solution in the sense of blockchain. But what do you see as, maybe you talked with governmental institutions in many countries, not only in Egypt, I guess, how can we realistically include them in such a, as which role ever, in such a blockchain, and if it's a public blockchain or not? So it would be interesting about your experiences with public authorities to get them into such a ecosystem which is connected by a blockchain.
I think Igor has a good experience. I think also Arne has an opinion because there was something happening with the World Trade Organization. But first, Igor. Sorry, Arne.
Yeah, maybe to think just relating Egypt. In fact, we didn't thought in this way when we start to discuss with them. They just said we want to implement in this certain small niche a blockchain, and we would like to be the first one, because what we are doing, the advanced cargo information system, is just a small part of their whole single window of Egypt. And that was the initial idea why they said we would like to have a blockchain. As I said, okay, neutrality is another thing why we succeed. But nowadays they are thinking how they can enlarge from the usage of advanced cargo information to the whole single window, and then from the single window to the entire governmental sector. It's a long way, it's very difficult. And again, okay, they started with this. If they will go on with using the same technology, maybe they succeed in Egypt, but what when it will come to a connection with another country, for example with a neighboring country, let's say Libya. If Libya will accept something else, so there will be no same language in brackets on the blockchain, and there will be no interchange of data, except if the interoperability will come in force. But we all know that we are quite far away from real interoperability.
Yeah. Super. So, Arne, go ahead.
So my top tip for engaging with the government, I'm fortunate enough to be on the Customs Consultative Committee with the European Commission and HMRC in the UK. And they are on a reform agenda to modernize their customs systems. So I was part of the Foresight, which is a methodology of studying the future group of how the EU Customs Union will look in 2040. And one of the results were one customs declaration, not 27, or no customs declarations. So if that's the solution, how do we get there? So the answer to this, if blockchain is the answer to this, we need to make that case now. And being in these committees and seeing how the digitalization and modernization of e-customs without blockchain evolves means we're missing a fundamental step. So being engaged in these foresights group, being part of the government discussion at European level, I think, is one of the most, one of the best ways to do it, because if we do it at European level, then we have a chance to bring that debate into Sweden, into the Czech Republic, into Romania, Bulgaria, and you know, Hungary, and the likes of it. So it's continuing to talk, and these user cases that you have now presented, and you have now presented, and you, of course, they are gold for this, because they show that it can work at national level, at international level, at company level, and at government level. But it requires more investment of time and effort to explain how the current path they are on can be enhanced by blockchain. So it's government engagement through the foresight and through the forum that currently exists, I think.
Super, super. So enough of governments. Let's just put them in their box. Now, a practical thing, and I think last question, unless... In a block, thank you.
Put it in the block.
Even though I heard there are blockchains which do not have block, by the way, but that's a different topic. Last question before we kind of conclude here. It's more to the people here or in the business space, so logistics providers, freight forwarders, or manufacturers, or distribution warehouses. What would you guys suggest them to the people here or those that listen to us online, what they should do in this you know, initiative? Should they get a login to Origin Trail or to CargoX and explore the functionality, or should they embark on some sort of a journey? Just few hints what to do at this stage, and I would maybe give a word to Jurij and to Michael.
Yeah. It's a good question, because, and maybe just relating to the previous point, often it's happened, especially in the past years, that companies were buying or trying to buy technology instead of solutions, right? And when you buy technology instead of solutions, you end up probably with not an optimal solution. So the first step is always to the usual, identify what are you trying to do, what are you trying to achieve, and then if blockchain and blockchain technology in combination with something else is the right way forward, then you go and engage, right? And I think there are some off-the-shelf solutions for specific, specific niches of the market. Whereas I think if you want to really go towards that bright future where you have, that Arne was talking about before, we have all of this data available, available for not only for verification but also for inspection, if you have permission, of course, to do so. I think those require a bit more, not off-the-shelf, but more customized things that will become off-the-shelf maybe sometimes down the road. And how to get engaged with that is, so like I mentioned, I think already before, Origin Trail is an open source system, so everybody can build on it. So if the company is technologically mature and they're confident, by all means, right? Otherwise, how we usually work with customers is that we identify the problems, we identify the issues, the broader issues that they have in the supply chain, and then we build a solution around this that utilizes the knowledge graph as a component of this, right? As a backbone, but it's never only, I've not heard of one solution that will be, oh, this is blockchain, this solves all of my problems, right? It's a fairy tale, like with any other technology, because things, they work they need to work in combination with each other to get to where you need to go, essentially. So that's my 2 cents.
Super. Michael?
So my recommendation is to analyze the processes where you do transactions and exchange of data with your partners, with your suppliers, and see where the pains are, where the costs are, where the mistakes happen. And this is a big potential for automation of these processes and digitalization of these processes. And when I'm talking about processes where I deal with other companies, with authorities, with my suppliers, with my partners, where everybody has worked together to some extent on a document, on a transaction, on a whatever, on a kind of communication, then blockchain might be a reasonable help and support for solving that. And then you can see what is the use case where I need help. And there are already today in several projects to each of these use cases solutions. Maybe not every one of that super mature, but there are.
Super. Thank you. So thank you, Jurij, Michael, Arne, and Igor. Unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you for the audience here to kind of carry on with us and try to soak a little bit of the knowledge. Thank you for the audience online. I think let's just persevere and just build the momentum for blockchain. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.